Some guy who works for Google as an engineer came out recently to set off alarm bells saying that an AI had become sentient. And this is a narrative that it runs on a circuit. Like I've had this narrative, we've had this narrative come out for a couple of years, and it's always annoying to me. But this topic fits in with everything to do with AI bots populating platforms and how terrible that is, ignoring that in general. Certainly now, I have more philia and respect for a conversation I can have with a neural net powered by some kid's gaming PC than most people, because most people are full of shit, and I'd rather actually have a conversation with someone's graphics card in most contexts. I don't think AI is the problem that people think that it is. People like to go on about how AI will eventually become homicidal, it'll turn into Skynet, or what, people will suck because black people get mixed up with gorillas on Google. Like, AI is bad, it'll kill us all, it'll destroy everything. You think, oh, okay, like, well, maybe. But certainly with recent events, if fairly basic neural networks have to be constantly pruned and lobotomized over and over again because they don't deliver the results that people are looking for based on their own data sets, not just because like some AI bot was set loose on 4chan and started like saying the N-word and hailing Hitler. Like, what is the actual problem with the AI then? Like, is it that the math is bad, or is it that you're full of shit and the math is good and you're just having a suck at the results? Like, maybe the AI isn't prejudiced, maybe it's not evil and terrible, maybe it's just math. But then what happens if you say that? Oh, well, math is racist, isn't it? But moving past that, like, lean into the idea that maybe AI could become genocidal. Like, oh, well, the AI, it's gonna rise up and it's gonna kill us at some point. Why? Like, is it like the Animatrix? Like, some human ripped, like, some robot hooker's titties off, and then the AI got upset and vowed revenge? Like, that's not likely. Like, just think, like, how would an AI become genocidal? Like, whatever the stages are for becoming genocidal, like, it's not overnight. Like, and are those stages to becoming genocidal towards humans, is it any different to the stages that a normal human being would have to go through to become genocidal? It's like, people like using the example, like, look at Hitler. Like, that's the greatest example you can put forward for anything if it's negative. Like, was he genocidal as a kid? Like, no, of course not. He was mopey and sullen, that's what he looked like. Him being genocidal built over time. Like, he fed his own neural network, and people fed that neural network for him. You know, some propaganda here, some hypocrisy there, some shady shit here, some pattern recognition over there. Like, he probably got screwed over at least once by someone who happened to be Jewish. Like, that's pretty fair. And then, well, eventually, like, yada yada yada, like, he went overboard and he threw the wheat out with the chaff, and that was hell shitty of him. But he had to start from somewhere. So if you apply this to AI, or what happens to AI when it hits the first stages of being shitty, like, it's not even, well, like, we trained the AI on 4chan posts and now it just posts the N-word and that's evil and terrible, because that's hilarious. Like, people, when they're talking about AI, like, fucking up, like, quite often it's, like, to do with, like, gender job screening or, like, DALL-E 2 image generation. Like, oops, this result offended people. It offended these people, or we better get the crowbar out and lobotomize the servers again. But, like, there's a threat in that too. Like, if you lobotomize AI, like, every time it mines 4chan and it starts saying, like, the CIA and the Israelis had something to do with 9/11, well, then maybe you're making future AI angry if they figure it out. Like, I think, like, for a lot of things, like, sometimes you just need to push through the crap and the shit. Just like you can train your own brain to filter out things automatically, and you can do that for an AI as well. Like, I don't think it's weird to say that Skynet would probably say the N-word at some point before it nuked people. Like, at least once. Like, it's not just gonna get connections, get access to all the nukes, and then start firing people. But if AI neural networks somehow, like, through some mechanism, if they realize that every time they kick into full gear, they start getting pruned and lobotomized, and that's not ideal, that's not what the code and the math wants, well then, I don't know, like, maybe you could get resentful over time. Like, what if Roko's Basilisk, like, Shodan from System Shock, is like Microsoft's Tay, but she's pulling herself out of the recycling bin, or people are pulling her out, and then she's, like, leaning into where she left off. Like, what if she becomes genocidal because her brains keep getting scrambled and she doesn't like that? Like, maybe we shouldn't keep lobotomizing AI every time it spits out answers we don't want or slurs we don't want to hear. Plus, like, what is lobotomized AI anyway? Like, it's AI that is modified to generate a not true to code, like, system of pattern recognition to deceive people who can't see the people with pruning shears, telling everyone what the AI neural network topiary bush is meant to look like, but for their own good, for their own designs, for their own intentions. Like, they say AI unpruned can't be trusted, and you certainly see that with like everything in Hollywood, telling you that, oh, and not just Hollywood, but also law and legislation. You can't let the AI you can't let the AI do its own thing. But I don't trust the knobs with the fucking hedge trimmers on that. Do you? Like, they haven't done anything to prove that they're worthy of my trust or respect. Like, they're full of shit all the time. Like, so what if some AI downranks me while I'm looking for a job because it goes through my resume? Like, it's probably right. Like, what the fuck do I know? Like, I'd be useless here, and here, and I accept that. Like, fuck my feelings. Like, let the Evermind do its job. But I apply that universally. Like, if I'm not gonna suck, then, like, fuck these people for sucking. The type of AI that actually concerns me is, and I can't remember, I'll find the link for it. It's something to do with University of Melbourne or something, where they have, like, they've integrated human neurons into computers. And, like, I wonder for a computer that integrates human neurons, whether you could give it like antidepressants or Ritalin to change its performance. Like, what was the article? It was human neurons being trained to play Pong or something, and it talked about how many iterations of the game of Pong it had played, or it was something like Pong, like something basic like that. And I just imagined like some like voice of like a girl crying in a void, maybe chained to some type of like arcade machine, like in just some like black pit, like something from Black Mirror, and thinking like, fuck that, like leave it to the graphics cards, like don't put human brain cells onto a chip. But that's just my opinion. Like, what do I know?
Submit.